Good afternoon again. Many thanks to all of you for being here for this luncheon, and because it's a business luncheon for business people, all of us have to get about the business of doing business very quickly. So we want to start now and have an efficient program so that we could do those things which are also important apart from this significant exercise. I was going through the room just now trying to put together the list for the salutations and recognized that everybody in the room was important, and that once I started calling names, I was going to get into trouble for the names I did not call. But being a brave man, I'm going to try calling some names anyway and live with the consequences after. So I want to recognize Mr. Clinton Williams, President of the Guyana Manufacturers and Services Association, Mr. Ramesh Prasad, Chairman of the PSC, Mr. Lance Hines, President of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and then we want to recognize several of the former leaders of the various private sector organizations in Guyana, which include Mr. Ramesh Duku, former Minister Maniram Prashad, Mr. Norman McLean, Mr. Hemraj Kisoon, and like I said, that's one of the lists where I'm going to get into trouble for not calling all the names that I should have. I see Kim shaking his head, suggesting that I'm in trouble already. I also want to recognize members of the Diplomatic Corps, particularly the High Commissioner of Canada to Guyana, Dr. Nicole Giles, Mr. Hurt, the Charge d'Affaires at the U.S. Embassy. I want to especially recognize too Sir Sridhar Ramphal, who we're blessed and fortunate to have with us today. There are a number of politicians in the room as well, and that list is growing too. And so I will recognize Mr. Kamrad Ramjitan, the leader of the AFC, and I see Mr. C.N. Sharma is on the other side of the room, and he was in the addition before the addition. They're calling this new thing a coalition, but I thought the thing before was a coalition. I thought the APNU was a coalition. And so the AFC joined into a coalition with a coalition. And so there are a number of plus signs there. But they're only using one. Mr. Sharma is in the first part of the equation, so we want to welcome you, sir. I think I missed Mr. Patrick Harding. And then I want to acknowledge the presence of the members of the media, and then to welcome all of you, ladies and gentlemen. And finally, to give place to the guest of honor today, Brigadier Retired David Granger, who was the leader of the coalition that's collating with the AFC to have a grand coalition in these elections, and who is going to speak with us today. To get the program started, I want to invite Mr. Clinton Williams, who is the president, like I said, of GMSA, to give you the formal welcome and to make some opening remarks. Clinton.
Thank you very much, Alex, for your kind introduction. Guest speaker, Brigadier Retired and presidential candidate David Granger, members of the Diplomatic Corps, representatives of government, my good friend Korshit Sutar, I think I recognize him somewhere in the crowd, representatives of the coalition, heads of main business organizations, business support organizations, my good friend Ramesh Prasad, current chairman of the PSC, my other friend Lance from the chamber, owners and representatives of enterprises in both the public and the private sector. Special invitees, I want to recognize my special guest, Sir Sri. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Thank you more specifically for the recent publication, Glimpses of Your Global Life. The GMSA welcomes you all to the first of a two-part series of political discourses. This event has now become a GMSA tradition. You would no doubt recall that we introduced this initiative in April 2011 to give both small and large business owners the opportunity to engage the presidential candidates one-on-one on the issues that affect the growth and development of their businesses. Arguably, this was the first time in Guyana's issue that is, that the private sector was able to interact with our leaders in these early stages of their election campaigns, and thus obtain from them first-hand information about each candidate's plans, their blueprint, if you will, and concomitantly the nation's chances of what one would describe as in the manufacturing sector, ebullient economic growth. Before I proceed any further, please allow me to express our congratulations to Brigadier Retired for being elected by the APNU AFC coalition as their presidential candidate. I must also express the collective gratitude of the private sector as a whole for your agreement to present the coalition's policies and programs and for giving us the opportunity to scrutinize them, hopefully. The private sector has long been considered the engine of growth in Guyana. But our full potential is yet to be realized in the face of a number of inhibiting factors. Those of you who have been following what we do in the GMSA, in our publications, in our annual presentation award dinner, would have learned about these, and I don't want to talk about them on this occasion again. The local business community, the true engine of the nation's growth, wants to be able to produce and earn. We want to be able to utilize and ultimately benefit from the wide range of natural resources that this country is blessed with. And to see that our respective environment blossom with a cleaner, healthier, better equipped, and more educated and more committed population. We'd like to see our GDP and per capita income stats skyrocket, because we know we can do so. It would be an enormous achievement if Guyana could be listed in the top 10 in the World Bank's report on ease of doing business in a not too distant future. We still use, some of us in the private sector, particularly GMSA, that tiny southeastern nation, Singapore, as our barometer. The similarities between that country and ours are many. We achieved independence about the same time. We pursued for a long time policies of socialism, which I believe both of us believe that we have abandoned. Our population are diverse and multicultural, multi-ethnic, among other things. One of the differences, however, lies perhaps in the governance structure and the support system for their businesses particularly the value-added sector and the services sector, which in turn is premised on the educational and skill development system and standards. It might be interesting to note that small and medium-sized businesses in Singapore constitute as much as 99% of all enterprises, and employment opportunity among these enterprises is more than 60%. Another factor for consideration is that this country has very few natural resources, except for their human resource capital, while Guyana, as all of us know, is endowed with substantial resources. For these reasons, this is one business development model we should strive to emulate, obviously by tweaking it to suit our circumstances. But our political and social cultures must be completely, in my view, revamped if we were to attract and sustain the type of investment, whether local or foreign, that would in fact contribute to national development priorities, which have been conceived by or have a buy-in of all the stakeholders. The private sector would like to be reassured that political engagement this season would be characterized by informed and objective disclosures or discussions on issues surrounding these matters. We believe that these pre-election interaction with the private sector will pave the way for candid, rational, and pertinent discussions, which hopefully will continue into the post-election period as well, thereby ensuring some level of trust, consensus, and or compromise. That's a good word, compromise. That's so necessary for continued development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Clinton. I just got a note to say that I missed some names when I was going through the list just now, that I didn't call Norman McLean and I forgot to call Ramsey Ali. I believe the note was arranged by Jerry Gavaya, who wanted to make sure that his name was called, but I'm not going to call his name today. This is a business lunch, and we have to just focus on the business at hand and not give any attention to Jerry Gavaya. Just before we move on to the program, I just want to ask you, if you look at your program, you will see that lunch is placed between the presentation by Brigadier Granger and the question and answer session. By way of clearing up matters, I just want to point out that we're going to change the order. I believe that none of us is here today because we're hungry. We're here because there are critical issues at hand that we want to engage on. So what we're going to do is, right after the presentation, we're going to take the questions, have that discussion, and then we're going to eat and leave. So please focus your attention on the presentation, make your notes, so we can have a good discussion before going to lunch. With that change of order, I'd like now to invite Ms. Marjorie Chester, the Public Relations Officer of the GMSA, to come and introduce Brigadier Granger, after which you will hear directly from Brigadier Granger. Thank you. Marjorie?
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I must say that this was unexpected. And I'm sorry, the script is not available, but I'll tell you what I know about the Brigadier. Mr. Granger is now the presidential candidate elected for the coalition party, APNU plus AFC. And before that agreement was signed on Valentine's Day in 1 month ago. He served as the leader of the opposition in the 10th Parliament. Mr. Granger is something of an academic, not something, but he is an academic as well as a politician. He is an academic. He is a very highly acclaimed historian. He was the founder, I could be corrected, of the Guyana Review magazine, if you remember it, from about 5 years ago. The Guyana Review magazine that focused so much on the history of colonial British Guyana and of independent Guyana. He is the head of the Guyana History Society. He is the head of a number of other military-related organizations. But before I close, I must tell you that he has had a long, distinguished, and outstanding career in the Guyana Defense Force. He retired as a brigadier and as the commander. The chief of staff. He was the chief of staff. I'm sorry. But while in the course of his career, he acquired quite a few accreditations, highly acclaimed medals, including the Military Silver Star, and he has attended numerous courses overseas in the metropolitan countries to learn more about jungle warfare, social policy development, and he has since become a very strong advocate for security of self, of business, of country. So, without much further ado, I'd like to present to you Brigadier Retired David Granger.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Mr. Chairman, President of the GMSA, Chairman of the Private Sector Commission, ladies and gentlemen. I won't make the mistake that Alex made just now. I'll just stop with it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. First of all, thank you for your kind invitation to speak today. I'm sorry about the change in the program. I was hoping to have lunch before the questions and answers because I believe some of my remarks might induce mild indigestion. And now that you put the questions first, I don't know what's going to happen. In any event, I'd like to thank you for this invitation. And I would like to go straight into the meat of the matter. 100 years ago, during the First World War, a German officer, I think Colonel Max Hoffmann, is credited with describing the Battle of the Somme as follows: the English soldiers fight like lions, but they are lions led by donkeys. That's 100 years ago during World War I. I do believe that Guyana is a nation of jaguars led by jackasses. I don't wish to be unkind to anyone, but even if you paid attention to the President's remarks, you get the impression that we do have a tremendous amount of resources, but somehow or the other we have managed to make ourselves a land of 1,000 impossibilities.
48 hours ago, I was on the Berbice River, visiting Kalkuni and Wiki and Ibini and other mainly indigenous settlements. And passing along would be Russian pontoons taking bauxite out, Chinese boats taking timber out, sometimes almost 2 stories high. And it struck me as I spoke to some of the residents there that in Guyana, some people make things happen, some people watch things happen, but on the Berbice River there were people there who wonder what happened. When you see the bauxite and the timber going out, you wonder what happened. But what struck me is that at Kalkuni, a resident there, despite all of the timber that was being shipped out, told me that he acquired a chainsaw and attempted to make a living for himself and his family by cutting down a few trees, whereupon the Guyana Forestry Commission descended on him, seized his equipment. So it just struck me that here is the Guyanese at Kalkuni in the Berbice River loses equipment and his livelihood for cutting down a few trees, while our resources continue to head north. You know, Kalkuni is in Region 10, the size of Kuwait. And throughout that region, I think you can say that poverty is pervasive. In fact, the Rupununi, and since January this year I've been to 20 Rupununi villages. Again, Rupununi is the largest region in Guyana, bigger than Costa Rica. Not a single highway. But the residents there are afraid that their lands will be taken away and given to loggers. And then you have, of course, the Kuyuni Mazaruni, bigger than the Netherlands. The richest parts of Guyana, diamonds, gold, timber. And you have the Burima Waini, 4 times the size of Trinidad and Tobago. That entire region is supplied by an old lady, I don't know if you ever met her, 78 years old, called Lady Northcote. Somebody who should be in the palms. And that is the story of the Northwest. They get 5 hours of electricity a day, and they've been getting that for the last 10 years. There is no bank in Mabarone. It is not even a town. It administers a region 4 times the size of Trinidad. Bartica administers a region bigger than the Netherlands. Mahdia administers a large region almost as big as Kuwait. Not a town. And of course the Rupununi, not a single highway. I was in Rupununi for the first time 45 years ago. And when I travel down south, still can't get cell phone contact. You recognize all the wooden bridges from 1969. No highway, no development, no internet connection. Guyana is a nation of jaguars. People want development. They want to break out. They want to get rich. They want to be like other nations. But they're led by jackasses. Stunted growth, strangled aspirations, stifled initiatives, and stolen revenues. That is the country we live in. A country, as the chairman, the president said, with so many resources, but so much poverty. Today I cannot claim to speak on behalf of the coalition, because the coalition has not yet merged the two policies, the policies of APNU and AFC. On another occasion, maybe that could be done, but today I speak only for the partnership and for myself. My vision, therefore, is that we should in Guyana, or we would in Guyana, create a world-class environment for business. We want to make Guyana the gateway between the Caribbean and South America. We are the only English-speaking nation on this continent. But most of all, we want to provide every Guyanese with a good life. How will we get that good life? First of all, we need a sound education system. We need skilled, innovative workers. We need an entrepreneurial class led by jaguars, just like you have the Asian tigers, you have the South American jaguars. The education change will be led by a 5-star university, not a 5-star hotel. We will convert the University of Guyana into a 5-star university that will graduate world-class entrepreneurs. We won't build this nation with hotels and casinos. We'll build this nation with colleges and universities. On the APNU AFC, every single region will have a regional technical institute and a regional agricultural institute. It is time to move our indigenous citizens and residents of the hinterland and our population as a whole out of poverty and ignorance by building more and more educational institutes, not drop-in centers. So many of our young people start off at the on-the-naming primary school, they go to the Camp Street Secondary, and end up at the University of Mazaruni. So many of our young people, every month, 500 of them drop out of school. In a few days' time, 16,000 will be writing the National Grade 6 exams, meant to qualify them for entry into secondary school. 8,000 will fail everything, and most of those failures will be in the hinterland. We can't build a world-class economy on the rubble of a broken education system. The second round of the ladder, if you want to call it that, to economic growth must be ensuring human safety and public security. APNU AFC will suppress banditry. We will suppress piracy. We will suppress gun running, smuggling, money laundering, execution murders. We can only do this with a reformed police force. A police force that over the last 15 years has received over 15 plans and recommendations from the British government and other friendly governments. Despite what is said in other quarters, I repeat, happy people don't kill themselves. And being first in the league of suicides does not, to my mind, make Guyana a happy country. Third, we need political stability. The winner-takes-all system is inherently unstable. It will lead to repeated collisions as we've had over the last 3 years. It will create more minority governments and more car crashes. The APNU AFC pre-election coalition will create for the first time in Guyana a government of national unity. We will reduce clashes in parliament, and we will guarantee political stability. We will ensure that local government elections are held, that parliament is not prorogued and dissolved prematurely, and that bills and measures passed by the majority are assented and made into law. Next, we will establish a strong institutional framework, a truly independent judiciary, a truly independent election commission that does not have to ask Roger for subventions, a free Auditor General's office, a fully equipped Ombudsman's office, reintroduce the Public Service Appellate Tribunal, and an effective police complaints authority. Most of all, we'll make the National Assembly free from executive control. We'll make the National Assembly one in which bills which are passed by the House are assented to. We'll ensure that there is a tripartite budget committee, that there is an Office of Legal Counsel, and there is Office of a Budget. We will not again have parliamentarians who travel to foreign countries to conduct parliamentary business and the executive refuse to pay for their transportation and accommodation. We will not have a legislative branch dominated and dictated to by the executive branch. We will establish a favorable regulatory environment within which business could prosper. There will be transparent procurement process with the establishment of the Public Procurement Commission. We will professionalize the enforcement and regulatory agencies, like that Guyana Forestry Commission which sees the poor man's power saw, like that famous net in West Africa that allows eagles to fly through but catches the flies. The GMSA officers, the GRA officers, all of whom are concerned with enforcement. We want to create a level playing field for investors. Guyanese in the diaspora and persons from all other countries. We welcome foreign direct investment, but they must all play on a level playing field. We are a growing economy, and we must also become a green economy. We in Guyana are the only English-speaking country in South America. Because of our size, our resources, our abundant flora and fauna, our agricultural potential, our membership of CARICOM, and particularly the Caribbean single market and economy, we should be flourishing, we should be thriving. But instead, many of our people are suffering. There are many impediments to progress. One of the biggest impediments, as I mentioned before, is a broken education system. But apart from that, there is the burden of hereditary poverty, poor people who produce poor children, and so on. And of course, the unemployment which goes with it, the crime, the corruption, and the cronyism. Taxes are too high, unbearably high, too difficult, too cumbersome to administer, too many waivers, too many loopholes. Taxation is too burdensome on business and too burdensome on the poor. And these heavy burdens encourage graft and corruption. There must be greater facilitation of investment. There must be protection of investment. We will support agro-processing. Why? Again, where do these ideas come from? These ideas come from my visits in the Rupaluni, in the Barima Wine, in the Cuyuni, in the Berbice River. I was going through Mokomoka in January. I was driving on mangoes. I asked the Tushao, oh yeah, the same Tushao, Mark George, who made the headline news, after he declined to allow certain persons into his community in accordance with the Amerindian Acts. If you won't go there, why don't you pick up the mangoes? Children fed up eating mangoes. But there's no power to make mango chunks or mango juice. Because the Mokomoka Hydropower Project, which was working all right, until there was some landslides and shifted the tube out of line, some genius decided that he couldn't afford $70 million to realign the tube. So he abandoned the whole hydropower project. Oh, the Jaguars. That man, that Tushao of Mokomoka is a Jaguar. He was asking me whether it's not legal for him to go and approach some Brazilian investors to have the hydropower project working again, because his village, Mokomoka, needs power. And the power that is generated at Lethem, it doesn't reach Mokomoka, and it's too expensive because they use dieseline or whatever. So he wants to rehabilitate the Mokomoka hydropower project. But the geniuses have decided it's too expensive. So Mokomoka is without power. The mangoes rot on the ground while we import Brazilian mango juice in Lethem. We need to support our manufacturing industry at the cottage level, at the grassroots level. We will support all forms of manufacture. You go to Brazil or to Barbados, and people are buying pineapple by the slice. Anything we produce and market and package efficiently, I'm sure, could be sold at a profit in Eastern Caribbean. But we need to solve the energy problem, yes. I grew up on the Quarantine. The village called Vim. You would have heard I grew up in the same village with Moses. Is he here? No? And most of the paddy farmers, well, the rice millers particularly, paddy farmers never do well, actually, had wind chargers. They were using the wind, generating power, day and night. When I went to Rupununi for the first time, they used wind chargers, pumping water, generating light. Not a single village in Guyana should be in darkness in 2015. We have wind, we have water, we have wave power, we have solar power. Not solar panels like toys that you give out at Christmas time, but whole farms of solar panels so that whole villages could be illuminated. Children can do their homework. Medical centers could function. Fly over the hinterland at night and what you see? Darkness. The Jaguars. People want to break out. People want to prosper. But the jackasses won't let them. Information technology. As soon as you pass it Ignatius, you can't contact anybody. No cell phone. There's 600,000 cell phones in the country. But not to South Rupununi. Until you get to Ishalton, where John Adams recorded an interesting conversation on the 3rd of December, prior to being slapped. But between St. Ignatius and Ishalton, it's a huge void. And every village, I mentioned access to the information superhighway, I got applause. Every village I mentioned, people should have cell phones to call their uncle in Afghanistan, I got applause. But there's a huge void, a communication void in this country. 4 years ago I promised that when we get into power, we'll give every teacher a laptop, one laptop a teacher. Well, I don't have a lot of laptops, but some friends have helped me. And every village I go into, I say, show me the headmistress, because you hardly have headmasters nowadays. That's a rare species. I give the headmistress some tablets that I gotten from a friendly businessman. And they're very grateful because it helps them with their work. It's a dumb policy to try to promote information technology and not introduce the teachers to information technology. But we'll sort that out from the 12th of May. We're going to sort that out. So our strategy, ladies and gentlemen, will be to reduce our reliance on those 6 sisters that we've grown up with: sugar, rice, timber, bauxite, gold, and fish. We have to diversify. We have to increase investment in manufacture and in trade. We have to reward an education system which is based on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We have to produce students, scholars, contractors, and workers who can build roads and bridges in the hinterland, who can repair our stellings and get rid of that Lady North coat, put her to sleep, and have modern ferries supplying our hinterland communities. We must increase our investment in infrastructure. We cannot continue to have 2 countries in Guyana. One country west of the Essequibo, without towns, without reliable electricity supply, without proper roads, proper bridges, and another Guyana east of the Essequibo, where we all live. Perhaps, Mr. President, I will ask you to have the next meeting in Mabaruma rather than in the Pegasus Hotel or in Madia. Let the business community see what 75% of Guyana looks like. Carry your rubber boots, please, because you won't be able to walk down Madia Main Street without them. We need to ensure that our riverine communities, particularly the Berbice and Pomeroon rivers, Essequibo River, we provide not cash grants, but school boats to get our children to school, river ambulances, so that when people get ill, they don't bleed to death waiting for daylight to come. We need to ensure that there's a road network from Bartica to Potaro, from Madia to Anai, from Linden to Letham, Anai to Aishalton. Those of you who are over 30 years would know all of these names. We've been talking about it for 30 years. We need to build more aerodromes, safe aerodromes, good navigation facilities, so that we reduce the amount of aviation accidents in the hinterland. Better stellings, like that one at Perico, one of the rail gateways to the hinterland, on which you have to walk very carefully. People have fallen into the water at Perico, trying to move from that rotten stelling into a moving boat. Very unsafe. But that's the way people transfer their coffins to Wakanam and Leguan, unless you want to go by the Sabanto and get stuck in the bush somewhere. So our state policy, therefore, must be one that is based on a new investment institution and put the old go invest to rest. People want hassle-free investment. People want a level playing field. Our foreign ministry has to refocus on economic diplomacy. What on earth do people have in mind to appoint Kelwan Lal as an ambassador to a BRIC nation, a BRIC state? Seriously. I mean, Brazil is fastest developing economies in the world. And you point Mr. Kellerman as the ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary. We want a form of economic diplomacy which will promote our own industry and manufacturers, and at the same time build strong relations with the states which are capital rich, like Brazil, India, China. And we must ensure that our diplomats to those centers are persons who understand the economic needs of our country and are appointed in order to promote those economic needs. If you have a diplomat in London for 23 years, what do you expect? After a while he becomes part of the landscape, part of the office furniture, and ceases to promote business, ceases to advance our economy. We must reward value-added production in Guyana. We must ensure that we also at the same time discourage the exports of our raw materials in the form that I saw the day before yesterday on the Berbice River. Raw stuff like we were doing 100 years ago. Raw logs, raw bauxite, raw sugar. We must start to develop a manufacturing industry based on processing right here, based on value added. And the APNU AFC government will reward people who can manufacture rather than just cutting down and digging out. But on the political side, and most important, we must restore faith in government. Yes, we will have local government elections after such a long period. We need to generate the enthusiasm among the jaguars in our regions and in our neighborhoods so that we can take control of those communities. That is why we are going to make Mabaruma, Bartica, Madia and Lethem tongues, so that local residents, people who know where the roof leaks, can manage their own communities. One man cannot sit down in Fort Street, Kingston, deciding to Suberize Georgetown, if Suberize is the right word. We must ensure that we encourage our local communities to govern themselves through their own town councils. We must restore faith in the National Assembly by preventing the absurd prorogation that took place on the 10th of November, a dark day for democracy in this country. Parliament has not met for 6 months, for over 6 months, before it was finally dissolved. I don't know if Obama could try that, preventing Congress from meeting for half a year. We must rebuild a professional public service and professional security services. As I said, there are over a dozen security plans, reform plans, which could be implemented. In other words, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, we must not allow this nation of jaguars to continue to be ruled by jackasses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Granger. I would like to move very quickly now into the question and answer segment. Having regard to the time, I don't know about you, but I listed 21 areas, and the Brigadier started counting them off as he went, but after number 3 he just spoke. But I think I've isolated 21 different subheads under which we can engage at this time. I don't want to suggest that the quality of the engagement would determine access to the lunch, but there I said it. Could I have you, just a show of hands please, we could get the microphone to you so that we could pose the questions to Mr. Granger. You could speak, we can hear you. Just say who you are, just in case we don't know you.
I'm Dr. Stuart Lycan from Lycan Renewable Power. Brigadier General Granger, you talked about level playing field and ensuring investment. How will you do that when there are no specific laws that address certain business areas, such as the funeral home and the coffin building industry? Today, anyone can create a funeral home, circumventing the necessary requirements and the education to do so. Yes, the Ministry of Health has tried to implement procedures, but they're unable to do so without any laws or acts that govern the establishment of funeral homes.
Well, that was the perfect question to bring everything to life.
Not the manufacturing part of the GMSA. I'm not an attorney. I don't know about the laws which govern this form of business. But it is something, if you say there are no laws, it is something that would need to be regulated. So I would take this on board. Some of my colleagues are here. And we'll make sure that the disposal of the dead is better regulated in future.
I commend on your presentation. My name is Amaila Chan. And yes, I'm one of the former presidents of GMSA in this house, so I've decided to do something new. You touched on the issue of energy very briefly, and that's a major factor in the manufacturing sector. Can you elaborate a little more as to what would be your energy plan if you were to assume office?
The remarks I made cover mainly what I would call green energy or sustainable energy, clean energy as well. And I do believe that the present administration has ignored or failed to develop fully our potential for wind, water, and solar energy. And that will be our initial thrust. There are over 100 sites which are capable of generating hydropower electricity in this country, hydroelectric power in this country, over 100 sites. Two of them actually generated power for a while, but out of neglect have more or less been abandoned. One at Chumachimari, which could have supplied Madhya, that is the main administrative center in the Potaro region, which could be rehabilitated. And the other one is Mokomoka, which, as I said, was affected by a landslide, but it certainly wasn't devastated. It was devastated by administrative neglect. But if it had been repaired in time, we wouldn't be shipping diesel into Latam at this point in time. So we will return to those sources of sustainable energy, but we will also develop hydropower, hydroelectric power with a project which we have identified as the Potaro Basin Development Authority, which could embody the present Amaila Falls. But it will not be a standalone project, it will be a basin development project. That is, as you know, the Potaro Basin or the Potaro River supplies the Kaicho. The Kaicho River is located on the Potaro River. So instead of relying on the Kuribrang alone, we are going to create a basin and we will completely reform the project the Amaila Falls Hydropower Project. We are not against hydropower, but we are against having a project that after 7 years you can't even complete the road. So we want a transparent project, and we want a project that will bring real electricity development to Guyana. That is our basic plan. We will be walking on two legs. One is sustainable energy, and that will incorporate the hydroelectric project.
Are there any other hands, please? Yes.
Jean François Amazon Trader. The name is French, but I've been here for 25 years. I was glad to hear you spoke about the institution to the University of Guyana, which I had the privilege to serve for 2 years, some 35 years ago, and then was able to do also the hardship every lecture at the university. I hope to talk with you again. And today is more at Amazon Trader and the Harper Farm project. I want to speak. We operate from Mabaruma, from the Garima River, and I want to know more about the security. What do you plan to do for the police force? 2 days ago, two gunmen attacked our operation in Northwest Garima River. 3 weeks ago, 3 gunmen attacked our boat in the Berbice River. So really we would like to know what you are doing for security in the interim, because we are, as entrepreneurs, we need to be safe, our employees need to be safe, our family need to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. As you know, Guyana has a 1,000-kilometer border with one of the world's largest exporters of small arms, the Federated Republic of Brazil. We have at least 3 gun crimes or 3 armed robberies in Guyana every day. So every 8 hours there is an armed robbery in Guyana. The police force is critical to public security. And to secure our borders, over 2,500 kilometers of borders, we need to provide the police with adequate assets. The police have to be given aircraft, and the police have to be given maritime craft in order to secure our borders, to prevent gun running and other forms of contraband. The longer we wait to do that, the more difficult it will be to secure this country. Mr. Gadraj promised that over a dozen years ago, we're going to have a police hearing. And he was a very promising minister. And he's still promising. We have to give the police those assets. They need boats, they need all-terrain vehicles, they need aircraft. They need personnel as well, sufficient trained personnel. But along with the personnel, they must be properly paid. I was a member of the Discipline Forces Commission, which handed in its report in 2004, all of 11 years ago. And one of the recommendations was to pay the police better. Policemen, I believe, are paid about $57,000 a month. You send a policeman earning $57,000 a month in a gold mining area, where everything that he needs to eat costs more because that's probably flown in. And he's got a family out on the coastline that he's got to feed. I think you can figure out what happens to him. Many of them do not have ATVs to move about. In one particular area, complaints were made to the police about girls being trafficked. And the police have to ask the traffickers to get a ride on the ATVs to go into the camps to which the girls were trafficked. It's ludicrous. You can't keep the entire police force on life support and expect it to make Guyana safe. The plans are there, but we resort to ornamental devices and measures, such as community policing. You know, you give some people some polo shirts and some batons, or neighborhood policing. But you do not have the type of policing which can keep our hinterland safe. I mentioned the sizes of the regions in the hinterland. You know very well. Barima Winey alone is 4 times the size of Trinidad. You're playing with trouble when you have the commander of this huge area, 3/4 the size of Guyana, in a little office in Kingston, in Eagle Area, Kingston. He's got to get out there where the action is. So the whole police force needs to be reformed and reorganized and re-equipped. You have to pay police better, equip them better, ensure that they are retrained and that the officers are properly trained in order to allow them to fulfill their function. No point lighting up Young Street at Christmas time. You have to get out there where the violence is taking place. That's where the action is, you know. That's where people want security. Look at the piracy. Sometimes families go, I met victims of piracy on the quarantine. People disappear. And nobody conducts any sort of inquest or any inquiry. Oh, it's not our problem. It might have been in Surinamese waters. So, it's a very serious problem. But we all have to wait till 12th of May. But we are going to reform the police force. We are going to give them the assets they need. And we are going to ensure that they're properly paid and properly officered so that they can perform their function. Right now, there is a bundle of plans, but the plans have not been fully implemented. So we know what to do, but you need to give us a chance to get in there to do it.
We're going to take just 3 more questions before lunch, so if you could just indicate your hands, please. There's one over there. Anyone else? So I can...
Robert Williams, Iceland. It is my view, Mr. Granger, that the development is significantly hinged on continuity. Can you say if there is any current policy that is being implemented that merits improvement should the coalition win? And if so, what are those policies? In my view, a holistic change can in some way increase development. So is there any current policy that merits continuity? And if so, what is that policy?
Can you think of any? Obviously, when a government changes, there will be reforms, and we won't throw the baby with the bathwater. We will obviously look to see what can be retained and what could be changed. But the point that I mentioned, for example, matters of governance, the attitude of the executive to the legislative branch, the respect shown to the institutions of the state will be among the most important. I mean, the institutions are there. We had an ombudsman from the time of independence, but for several years over the last decade during the presidency of Mr. Jagdeo, there was no ombudsman. Well, we are going to ensure that the institutions are re-erected and respected. You can't change the judiciary, but you can make sure that the judiciary is not subject to financial restrictions by the executive. These are things that we fought for, to have institutions like the Elections Commission independent, the National Assembly, the Parliament Office independent, an independent Parliamentary Council. So I can't think now of any specific matter that the Ramatar administration is actually doing that we will continue unchanged. The reason why people vote for change is to have change. And such change will come about by reform. We're not going to be breaking down, we're going to be building up. So, I'm sorry I can't give you a full answer, but there are certain things, of course, we'll discontinue. But there are many things that we will reintroduce and reform. Particularly the ones I mentioned, the regulatory organs, the institutions, the state, and so on. If you knock down the institutions, the state will collapse. And that is what's been happening. People have been tampering with institutions too long in this country. And that's why we're in the state we are.
This is a invitation of government, Broadcom Chamber. A lot of the initiatives that were mentioned are keeping with our competitive manifesto. One I'm sure we will be very much interested is the tactics, which will be utilized to achieve some of these goals that are set. My observation is not observation on your presentation today, but it will be very unfortunate if your political opponents the same way you are treated. I believe it's important to realize that we're all Guyans, and if you were to assume power, that all Guyans have equal opportunity and access. Every economy, every company needs both Jaguars and Japas to develop. I've not as yet seen a Jaguar pulling it off the side. So it was, treating everyone with respect is of key importance if we are ready to build and develop. It's more about it.
When I used the word jackass, I didn't mean it in the sense other than it was meant in 1915. That is why I used the quotation from the First World War, in which she said there were lions led by donkeys. And in fact, if you go back into ancient history, you'll find that the quotation has been used very frequently. So I wasn't calling a particular person a jackass. I don't normally use that type of language, but I was simply using the comparison of an established quotation of lions being led by donkeys. A donkey is a jackass. But we don't have lions in Guyana, we have jaguars. So I was using a South American comparison, a South American metaphor, if you want to call it that. So I don't mean disrespect to anybody. What I'm saying is that our policies have not been intelligent in accordance with what we feel the people of this country deserve or could achieve. So I wasn't specific, I was being general, and please remember that I'm making a comparison between the expression. If you Google it, you will see the expression, lions led by donkeys. So I didn't invent it. So I could very well have said jaguars led by donkeys. But then you might have made the same comment. But believe me, I'm not showing disrespect to anybody. I've seen a few jackasses myself, drawing cards here and there. I agree with you. But we are not going to be an administration that is going to be bent on revenge, that is bent on recrimination, or that is bent on retribution. It is going to be one that is based on respect. And I agree with you that it takes all time to pull the cart. Some will be sitting, others will be walking, pulling the cart. But it's just a matter of cause and consequence. Thank you for that observation.
Okay, I need one last question so that we don't go to lunch on jackass and lunch. Parsing out to the jackasses. A hand over here.
My question to you is, I'm Jeannie Vera, I'm from Giselle. My question to you is, you spoke earlier about the importance of communications across Guyana and the past. I want to know what are your plans for the liberalization sector? We're still not liberalized, so we can enable the development through telecommunications as well as the licensing sector.
As you know, the prorogation of Parliament brought to an end the deliberations of the Special Select Committee on telecommunication reform. Had it not been for road, we probably would have had an act now which is acceptable to the major players in the telecommunication sector. Much work had been done, and we did not feel that the prorogation was justified. But as you know, everything that was on the table as of 10th of November has now been brought to a halt. And when the 11th Parliament is convened, it will have to be reintroduced and redebated. So I can't go into all of the provisions of the Act, but we have had meetings of the Special Select Committee, and I am satisfied that deliberations had probably reached about 85 or 90%. And both the major players have been satisfied. We have engaged with them on the progress made towards liberalization of the sector. So I believe that there is going to be a satisfactory outcome when the matter returns to the Special Select Committee in the 11th Parliament. That is as much as I could say at present, but the views of both digital and GT&T have been incorporated in the reforms which have been proposed.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Granger. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm ready to do lunch.